The accidental declaration. Some mistakes change everything. Others simply reveal what was already there, waiting to be acknowledged. Natalie Brooks had spent 5 years building her reputation as the most professional project manager at Sterling Dynamics. 5 years of perfect presentations, flawless client meetings, and absolutely zero workplace drama. She kept her personal life separate, her emotions in check, and her career trajectory pointed straight up. Then came the Monday morning that shattered her carefully constructed world. She stood in the marble lobby of Sterling Dynamics, clutching her tablet and trying not to hyperventilate. Upstairs in the conference room, the entire executive board was waiting. Her presentation on the Morrison Tech merger was supposed to start in 10 minutes. The presentation that would determine whether she got promoted to senior director or watched someone else take the position she had earned, but none of that mattered anymore. Because she had just called her boss sir in front of 20 people, not her actual boss, Richard Sterling, the CEO. That would have been normal, expected even. No, she had called Daniel Foster sir. Daniel Foster, her colleague of 5 years. Daniel Foster, who sat 3 cubicles down and argued with her about everything from coffee preferences to project timelines. Daniel Foster, who she had been secretly, desperately, impossibly in love with since the day he joined the company, and she had said it in the lobby, in front of clients, in front of the marketing team, in front of Janet from HR, who noticed everything and forgot nothing. The word had slipped out so naturally, so automatically, when he had handed her the forgotten flash drive she needed for her presentation. Thank you, sir. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like she called him that all the time. Like she had not just revealed the embarrassing truth, that she had apparently developed some kind of subconscious respect complex mixed with attraction, mixed with complete and utter disaster. The lobby had gone silent. 20 faces had turned toward her, and Daniel had frozen, his hand still extended with the flash drive, his dark eyes wide with something that looked like surprise mixed with something else she could not identify. Then Janet from HR had smiled. That knowing, dangerous smile that meant the entire office would know about this by lunch. Now Natalie stood alone in the lobby, everyone else having filed into the conference room, and contemplated the various ways her life was about to implode. She could quit, move to another city, change her name, become a hermit in the mountains where words like sir never accidentally escaped from her traitorous mouth. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Conference room. Now, we need to talk. Natalie closed her eyes. Of course they needed to talk. They needed to talk about how she had just humiliated herself in the most spectacular way possible, how she had revealed feelings she had spent 5 years carefully hiding, how their perfectly professional working relationship was now ruined forever. She took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, each second feeling like an hour. The doors opened and she walked down the corridor toward the conference room, her heels clicking against the polished floor like a countdown to disaster. Daniel was waiting outside the conference room door. He had loosened his tie slightly and his usually perfect hair looked like he had run his hands through it several times. When he saw her approaching, something flickered across his face. Before she could say anything, before she could apologize or explain or simply die of embarrassment, he stepped closer. We have a problem, he said quietly. I know. Natalie forced herself to meet his eyes. I am so sorry. It just slipped out. I did not mean to make things weird between us. I can request a transfer to the Seattle office. We never have to work together again. That is not the problem. Daniel glanced toward the conference room door, then back at her. The problem is that Richard heard about it. Natalie felt her stomach drop. Of course Richard had heard about it. Janet from HR reported directly to Richard. By now the entire executive team probably knew that Natalie Brooks had some kind of bizarre sir complex when it came to Daniel Foster. He thinks we are together, Daniel continued, romantically. He thinks that is why you called me sir, some kind of inside joke between a couple. What? Natalie's voice came out higher than intended. Why would he think that? Because I did not correct him. Daniel's jaw tightened. Because when he asked me if we were dating, I said yes. The world tilted slightly. I'm sorry, you what? I panicked. Daniel's voice was low, urgent. Richard was going on about how he appreciates employees who maintain professionalism, even in relationships. How it shows maturity and commitment. How he is considering both of us for the senior director position but wants to make sure whoever gets it has the right priorities. So you told him we are dating. I told him we have been dating for 6 months, quietly, professionally, not letting it interfere with work. Natalie stared at him. 6 months. It seemed like a reasonable time frame, long enough to be serious, short enough that no one would question why they had not noticed. Daniel ran his hand through his hair again. Look, I know this is insane, but Richard was so impressed. He said it showed we both have strong values, that we prioritize our careers but also understand the importance of personal connections. And now he thinks we are a couple.
And he wants to have dinner with us.
This Friday, him and his wife, to celebrate my promotion, your promotion to senior director. He announced it 5 minutes ago. Daniel met her eyes, but he also said he is promoting you too. Co-directors. He thinks we will make an excellent team both professionally and personally. Natalie leaned against the wall, trying to process this. In the span of 20 minutes, she had gone from mortified about accidentally calling Daniel sir to being fake engaged in a workplace lie that could destroy both their careers. We have to tell him the truth, she said finally. We can't. Daniel's voice was firm. Not now. Not after he just made us both co-directors based on thinking we are this mature professional couple. If we admit I lied, we both lose the promotion. Probably our jobs too, so what do? We have dinner on Friday. We act like a couple. We get through the evening. And then we figure out how to quietly end this fake relationship in a few months. Daniel's eyes searched hers. I know this is my fault. I should not have lied. But I was not thinking clearly, because I called you sir in front of everyone. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. About that, please do not make me explain it. Natalie could feel heat rising in her cheeks. It was an accident. A slip of the tongue. It does not mean anything, does it not? Daniel took a step closer. Because the way you said it, the way you looked at me. The conference room door opened suddenly. Janet from HR stuck her head out. There you are. Richard wants to start the presentation. Both of you. He wants the newly promoted co-directors to present together. She smiled that knowing smile again. Congratulations, by the way. You two make such a lovely couple. Before Natalie could respond, Janet disappeared back inside. Daniel held out his hand. Ready, partner? This is insane, Natalie whispered, completely. But his hand stayed extended. So what do you say? Can you pretend to be my girlfriend for one dinner? Natalie looked at his hand, then at his face. At the man she had loved secretly for 5 years. The man she had accidentally revealed her feelings to. The man who had just lied to save both their careers and was now asking her to continue that lie. She took his hand. One dinner, she agreed. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. One dinner. They walked into the conference room together, hand in hand, to face 20 curious faces and begin a presentation that would determine their professional futures while maintaining a personal lie that felt dangerously close to something real. Richard Sterling stood at the head of the conference table, beaming. Here are our new co-directors. I was just telling everyone about your excellent work on the Morrison merger. And congratulations again on your relationship. It is refreshing to see young professionals who can balance career and personal life so well. Natalie felt Daniel's hand tighten on hers. Thank you, sir, Daniel said smoothly. We believe in supporting each other both professionally and personally. Richard nodded approvingly. That is exactly the attitude we value at Sterling Dynamics. Now let us see this presentation that is going to change our company's future. Natalie moved to the front of the room, Daniel beside her. As she pulled up the first slide, she caught his eye. He gave her a slight nod, a silent message of solidarity. They had gotten themselves into this mess. Now they had to get through it together. The presentation began, and Natalie forced herself to focus on the numbers, the projections, the strategic advantages of the Morrison merger. But she was hyper-aware of Daniel standing beside her, of how naturally they fell into rhythm together, her explaining the financial aspects while he covered the technical details, of how when she stumbled over a particularly complex section, he smoothly stepped in with a clarifying example, of how it felt less like acting and more like revealing something that had always been there. An hour later, the presentation ended to enthusiastic applause. Richard stood again. Excellent work. This is exactly why we promoted you both. You complement each other perfectly. He looked around the room. I expect everyone to give our new co-directors your full support as they lead the Morrison integration. After the meeting dispersed, Natalie found herself back in the lobby with Daniel. The same lobby where this entire disaster had started just 2 hours ago. That went well, Daniel said carefully. The presentation or the lie? Both, maybe. He loosened his tie completely. So Friday dinner. We should probably get our story straight, our story, right? Natalie pulled out her phone. When did we start dating? Where did we go on our first date? Do we have inside jokes beyond me accidentally calling you sir in public? About that? Daniel's voice dropped lower. Why did you call me sir? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. I told you. It was an accident, Natalie. His eyes held hers. People do not accidentally use terms like that unless there is something behind it. Heat flooded her face. I respect you professionally. You are good at your job. Sometimes that respect just comes out in weird ways. That is not what it sounded like. Daniel took a step closer. It sounded like something else entirely. Then you misheard. Natalie's heart was hammering. Now, are we going to plan this fake relationship or not? For a long moment, Daniel just looked at her. Then he pulled out his phone. Fine. Let us plan our fake relationship. But Natalie? Eventually, we are going to have to talk about the real one. There is no real one. Keep telling yourself that. He started typing. First date 6 months ago. Where would we have gone? Somewhere quiet, professional. The wine bar on 6th Street, too obvious. Everyone from work goes there. Daniel thought for a moment. The bookstore cafe on Maple. The one with the reading nook in the back. How do you know about that place? I have seen you there. Saturday afternoons. You always order the lavender tea and sit in the corner with legal thrillers. You have noticed what I read? What I order? Something flickered across his face. I notice a lot of things about you, Natalie. The air between them felt suddenly charged. Daniel's phone rang, breaking the moment. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. My mother. She somehow already heard about my promotion. Small town network. He answered. Hi, Mom. Yes, it is true, co-director, thank you. Natalie started to walk away to give him privacy, but Daniel caught her wrist. Stay. Then, into the phone. Actually, there is someone I want you to meet. Her name is Natalie Brooks. We have been dating for 6 months. Natalie's eyes widened. He was telling his mother, making the lie bigger, more complicated, more real. Yes, she is lovely. Yes, you can meet her. Friday actually does not work. We have dinner with my boss. What about next weekend? He looked at Natalie, his expression both apologetic and determined. She found herself nodding. Perfect, see you then, Mom, love you too. He hung up and turned to face Natalie's incredulous expression. You just told your mother about us. She would have found out anyway. Better she hears it from me. Daniel, this is getting out of control. It was supposed to be one dinner with your boss, I know. But now that we have started this, we have to see it through. His hand was still on her wrist, his thumb absently tracing circles on her skin. Unless you want to back out, I will tell Richard the truth. Take the fall myself, and let you lose your promotion? Let both of us lose everything we have worked for? Then we keep going. His eyes searched hers. Can you do that? Can you pretend to be in love with me? The question should have been simple. But standing there in the lobby where this had all started, Natalie realized the truth she had been avoiding. She did not have to pretend. One dinner became two. Two became meeting his mother. And somewhere along the way, the fake relationship they had built to save their careers had started feeling like the most real thing in her life. Yes, she said quietly. I can do that. Daniel's expression softened. Thank you for going along with this insanity, for not letting me face Richard's disappointment alone, for being the kind of partner who would risk everything to maintain a lie. Is that what we are? Partners professionally, definitely. His thumb still traced patterns on her wrist. Personally, that is still to be determined. After this is all over. After this is all over. He agreed. But as Natalie walked back to her desk, trying to focus on actual work instead of the way Daniel's hand had felt on her skin, she wondered if there would ever be an after, or if they had already crossed a line they could never uncross. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Daniel, dinner Friday. Pick you up at 7. Wear something that says mature professional in a serious relationship but not trying too hard. Despite everything, Natalie smiled. You have thought about what I should wear? The response came immediately. I think about a lot of things when it comes to you, Natalie Brooks. More than I probably should. She stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Before she could respond, another message appeared. Also, for the record, I did not mind you calling me sir. Actually found it rather interesting. See you Friday. Natalie set down her phone and put her head in her hands. One dinner, she had agreed. One simple dinner to maintain a professional lie. How had her life become so complicated so quickly? And why did part of her not want it to go back to simple? The dinner that changed everything. The problem with pretending to be in love, Natalie discovered, was that it required studying the person you were supposed to love. And studying Daniel Foster was dangerous territory. Friday arrived with unseasonable rain and Natalie's growing sense that she had made a terrible mistake. She stood in front of her closet for the third time that week, surrounded by rejected outfits and second thoughts. Her phone rang. Melissa Chen, her best friend since college. Tell me you are not actually going through with this insane fake dating scheme, Melissa said without preamble. Hello to you too. And yes, I am going through with it. My career depends on it. Your sanity might not survive it. Natalie, you have been in love with this man for 5 years. Now you are pretending to date him. Do you not see how this ends in disaster? It ends in both of us keeping our promotions and then quietly breaking up in a few months. Very civilized. Very professional. Nothing about this is professional. Melissa's voice softened. Honey, what happens when pretending becomes real for you but stays pretend for him? It won't. I'm keeping my emotions separate. This is a business arrangement. You called him sir in public. That was an accident, was it though? Melissa paused. Be honest with yourself, Nat. Why did that word come out? Natalie sat down on her bed, staring at the navy dress she had finally selected. I do not know. Maybe because part of me has always seen him as someone worth respecting, someone worth following, someone worth trusting with everything. That sounds like more than professional admiration. It has to be just that. Because if it is more, and this all falls apart, I lose him completely. At least right now we still work together. We still talk. If I ruin that by catching real feelings during our fake relationship, I lose everything. Maybe you already have real feelings. Maybe you have had them for 5 years. After Melissa hung up, Natalie finished getting ready in silence. The navy dress was perfect, sophisticated without being overdressed. She kept her makeup natural, her hair in loose waves. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone who looked ready for a professional dinner. Someone who looked like she had everything under control. The reflection was convincing. If only the person behind it felt the same way. Daniel knocked at exactly 7 o'clock. When Natalie opened the door, she nearly forgot how to breathe. He wore a charcoal suit with a deep blue tie that matched his eyes. His usually messy hair was styled perfectly. And when he saw her, something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like awe. You look beautiful, he said quietly. You clean up well yourself. They stood there for a moment, neither moving. Then Daniel cleared his throat. We should go. Richard does not appreciate lateness. Right. Professional dinner. Career dependent. Totally normal. Natalie grabbed her coat and purse. In the car, Daniel pulled out a small notebook. I made notes, he said. About our relationship. Things we should know. You made notes about our fake relationship. I am thorough. He flipped through pages covered in his neat handwriting. We started dating 6 months ago after you helped me with the Henderson account crisis. I asked you out for coffee to say thank you. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into dating. That actually sounds believable. I based it on what really happened, except the part where I asked you out. He glanced at her. In reality, I wanted to ask you out after Henderson, but I thought you were not interested. Natalie's heart stuttered. You wanted to ask me out? Past tense. Daniel returned his attention to the notebook. Anyway, our first kiss was after our third date. The bookstore cafe. You had just finished reading some legal thriller and were explaining the plot holes. I kissed you mid-rant because you looked so passionate about fictional murder. The detail in his story was almost alarming. I talked about plot holes. You always do. It is actually endearing. He turned a page. We have been to the art museum twice. That Thai restaurant you love 3 times, and we spend most Sunday mornings at the farmer's market. You buy fresh flowers. I buy overpriced coffee. How do you know I buy fresh flowers at the farmer's market? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I see you there. Sometimes. I never approached because I assumed you wanted space from work people on weekends. The realization hit Natalie like a physical force. "How long have you been paying attention to me?" Daniel pulled up to a red light and turned to face her. "Longer than I should admit when we are supposed to be starting a fake relationship based on a lie I told to save our careers." The light turned green. He drove on, leaving the confession hanging in the air between them. They arrived at Sinclair, an upscale restaurant in the financial district. Richard and his wife Catherine were already seated at a corner table. "Here we go," Daniel murmured. He took Natalie's hand, and she tried not to think about how natural it felt. Richard stood to greet them, pumping Daniel's hand enthusiastically. "There are my star co-directors. And Natalie, you look lovely. Thank you for inviting us." Natalie smiled as Catherine kissed her cheek. "We are so glad you could make it." Catherine was elegant in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Richard has told me so much about you both. I am thrilled he finally promoted people who understand both excellence and values." They settled into dinner with wine and appetizers. Richard was in fine form, telling stories about Sterling Dynamics' early days. Catherine asked thoughtful questions about their work. And through it all, Daniel played his part perfectly. His hand rested on Natalie's chairback. He refilled her water glass without being asked. When she mentioned being cold, he immediately offered his jacket. Small gestures that looked effortless but felt carefully choreographed. Except they did not feel choreographed. They felt natural, like muscle memory from a relationship that had never actually existed. "So tell us," Catherine leaned forward conspiratorially, "how did you two really get together?" Richard mentioned something about a crisis project, but I want the romantic details. Natalie and Daniel exchanged glances. He gave her a slight nod, passing the storytelling to her. "It was the Henderson account," Natalie began. 3 months of work nearly fell apart because their CEO changed his mind about everything. I was ready to quit. I had spent countless hours on that proposal, and it felt like it was all for nothing. I found her in the break room at 11 at night. Daniel picked up the story. She was stress-eating chocolate and contemplating arson. I was not contemplating arson. You definitely were. The fire extinguisher was suspiciously close to your laptop. He smiled at the memory. I had just finished a similar disaster project. So I understood. We ended up staying until 3 in the morning rebuilding the entire proposal together. And you asked her out after that? Catherine looked delighted, not immediately. Daniel's expression turned almost sheepish. I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out the right way to ask. Natalie is intimidating when she is in professional mode. Very focused. Very no-nonsense. I am sitting right here. You are intimidating. He turned to her, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. But that night in the break room, I saw someone different. Someone vulnerable and real and absolutely brilliant even when she thought everything was falling apart. That is when I knew I wanted to know her better. All of her, not just the professional version. The table went quiet. Catherine looked between them with knowing eyes. Richard cleared his throat, suddenly emotional. "That is beautiful," Catherine said softly. "Real connection comes from seeing each other at your worst and still choosing to stay." Natalie could not speak, because Daniel's story was not entirely fake. That night in the break room it happened. She had been on the edge of breaking, and he had appeared like some kind of miracle. They had worked until dawn, and she had gone home thinking about how easy it was to be around him. How safe she felt sharing her fears and frustrations. She had wanted to see him as just a colleague. But that night had shifted something, had made her start noticing things. The way he listened completely when people talked, how he remembered small details about everyone's lives, the quiet competence he brought to every project, how he made her laugh even when she wanted to cry. "Your turn," Daniel said quietly, pulling her from her thoughts. "How did you know?" The question hung there, heavy with implications. This was supposed to be part of the story, part of the performance. But Catherine and Richard were watching with such genuine interest that lying felt wrong. "The kiss," Natalie heard herself say. At the bookstore cafe, I had been explaining why the murder mystery I just finished was completely implausible, going on and on about forensic timelines. "Then you just kissed me, right in the middle of my rant." She met Daniel's eyes across the table. "And in that moment I realized you were not just tolerating my bookish rambling. You actually found it charming. You saw my overthinking, analytical, sometimes exhausting personality and wanted more of it, not less. That was when I knew." Daniel's hand found hers under the table. His thumb traced the same pattern it had in the lobby days ago. Something that was becoming familiar. Becoming theirs. "You are not exhausting," he said softly. "You are fascinating." Richard cleared his throat again, definitely emotional now. "This is why I promoted you both. This understanding, this partnership, you make each other better." "They do," Catherine agreed. "Richard, remember when we were like this? Young and so certain about each other?" Still certain, Richard reached for his wife's hand. 40 years later, and I am still certain. Dinner continued with easier conversation. Richard shared advice about managing teams. Catherine told stories about navigating corporate life as a working mother in the 80s. The wine flowed, and Natalie found herself relaxing into the evening, into the role she was playing, into the hand holding hers under the table. Dessert arrived. Some elaborate chocolate creation that Natalie could barely taste because Daniel's knee had somehow ended up pressed against hers. "There is something else we wanted to discuss," Richard said as coffee was served. "Catherine and I host an annual charity gala next month. Very black tie, very Boston elite. We raise money for youth education programs. It is our pet project," Catherine added. "We would be honored if you both would attend. As our guests and as representatives of Sterling Dynamics' commitment to giving back, we would love to," Daniel answered before Natalie could process the invitation. "When is it? 3 weeks from tomorrow?" Catherine pulled out her phone. "I will send you the details. It is quite the event. The mayor usually attends. Several city council members, business leaders from across the region.